sex was always something we were running from. Celibacy was the answer, which it is, but celibacy, like anything outside of celibacy, was an enemy and an enemy to your soul. And how dare you, and don't go there, and don't look at that, and don't talk about it. Sex was always something we're running from. Sex is something we're running to. It's something that we get to in marriage. And I think that we need to teach it in that way. An author once said, the young man who rings the bell at the brothel is unconsciously looking for God.
Wow.
The young woman who gives her body away to so many men are unconsciously looking for God. What you're searching for, God created you to find. You're just looking in all the wrong places.
Wow.
What you're searching for is an intimacy with someone that God created you to have, but you're looking in the wrong places. If you've done that, we're not shaming you for it. What we're telling you is God has something better for you.
Yes. Welcome back to the Greater Marriage Podcast. You look good today, babe.
Thanks, baby. I like that shirt. Dang, what is that? Is that a blouse? Is that a sweater? A cardigan?
All of the above.
All of the above. Big fan. Everything looks good on you.
I can embroider something for you if you want.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. I just got my corduroy on, kicking it 90s style today. So very excited. If you've noticed in this sexies, I've gone full hat collection. Big hat and shoes guy. So when you've got 40 hats, you gotta get some of the rotation.
You do have a lot of hats
working
and
in
shoes.
A little bit. I do. My amazing wife built a hat wall in my closet, and so I've got all these hats hanging, and then I've got like the reserve hats and the mowing hats, and the hats on lock too, and then always looking for new inventory. You know what I'm saying?
You know what's funny? The other day, one of our boys was in my closet, and he was looking at my shoes, and he's like, Mom, how many pairs of shoes do you think you have? And I was like, oh, I don't know, bud. I have never really counted. He goes, how many do you think Dad has? He definitely has less than you, right? And I said, he probably has less than me, but he probably has paid quadruple what I have paid. If we're talking about the average price of shoe, I mean, mine are like $30 maybe.
That's like an expensive pair.
Yeah.
You're just not like, you've never been one to be like, babe, I need the golden goose. I was gonna say Grey Goose, the vodka. I need the golden gooses. I need the, whatever, like.
I'm not a fangirl. I can't, no offense to anybody who likes the golden goose. My type A personality doesn't let me wear shoes that look dirty when I buy them. I just can't do it. And then yours, the average price is higher.
It depends on the shoe. But, I'm a big Jordan guy. Got some Nikes, Nikes in the rotation, Jordans, a couple of Adidas, very few.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so anyways,
today we're not here to talk about shoes.
Yeah, we're not talking about shoes today.
To talk about sex.
Come on.
And which you like even more than shoes.
I sure do. Hey, come on now.
Okay, specifically, we are talking today about how the purity culture could potentially ruin your sex life.
I think we can cover how the purity culture has ruined
sex
lives. I mean, in millennials and anyone raised in it's not that it's over, right? Like that idea still exists in many churches today, but in the evangelical circles, in the Southern Baptist circles, which are the two kind of camps that we were raised in, I think that purity culture framed the mindset of the majority of churches in how you approach dating and how you approach courting and how you approach sex and how you approach all of it.
Disclaimer, it's not all bad.
No.
There's some great things about the purity culture, but there are a lot of things that we have seen filtered into our own marriage and marriages that we've worked with that have really caused issues. Something that was meant to be, a guardrail actually has become a hang-up in people's marriages.
Yeah, I think that the purity message was a broken message with a pure heart. Like, I think that what was trying to be taught was not necessarily a bad thing. Hey, we need to stay pure. We need to, save ourselves from marriage. We need to relook at how we think of dating and how we prepare for marriage. And, men need to be men and be pursuers, but we need to pursue not out of lust. I mean, all of those ideas are good ideas. I think
Yeah.
that the way we taught them and the kind of legalism that we walked in through that season, that's where we got unhealthy, is that we leaned on the legalism side of it instead of allowing the grace of God to be enough and teaching people, hey, this is not a bad thing that you're feeling. This is, sex is a gift. It's a great thing. But I think that we said like sex isn't for you. Like it's for married couples and that's not you. And it's like, hold on,
Right.
it's gonna be me.
Right.
Like, can I not be in preparation mode? Like, and it's like, I think we tried to suppress and push away and run from the idea of sex and the idea of intimacy in every single way. And I think that in doing that, we just leaned too far
Yeah.
one way.
Well, and here's the thing too. If you weren't raised in that movement, because you're a generation below us, or because maybe you were just raised in a different environment than that, these are still, what we're talking about are still some really good things to look out for, because maybe they've trickled into your marriage a different way. And I think things to maybe be on the lookout for with raising your own kids, to
For
make
sure.
sure that those things are not instilled in them, even subconsciously by us or by someone else, because that's what we want for our kids, right? We don't want them to hit their heads on the things that we have hit our heads on.
Yeah.
That's part of our responsibility as parents, as a generation above, to pass down what we've learned to the next generation. So I'm excited to talk about this today.
Pretty good.
I can't think about the purity movement and not think about true love
True
waits.
love waits. Man,
True
purity
love
rings,
waits. Yes.
promise rings, courtship.
Oh man, I was raised Southern Baptist, and I mean, amazing, great people. Like to this day, one of my best friends, who is more like a sister to me than anybody. We sat in church next to each other, played MASH, and got, backhands from our moms for giggling through service and everything. So many great things came out of that church. And one of the things that we did in our youth group was this True Love Waits program. And basically, if you're not familiar with it, it's this program that you go through that you learn about purity and God's intention for abstaining from sex until marriage. And then you, along with your friends, make this commitment together to abstain until marriage, to only experience sex inside of marriage. And then there's this ring ceremony in front of the church. You literally go up in front of the church, your parents or one of your parents are there. They present you with this ring. You wear it in place of an engagement
Just
ring
incredibly awkward.
until you step into marriage. And then it is replaced with your ring. And at that point, you give yourself. So the idea of true love waits is beautiful. It's biblical. The foundation is there. However, I think there are some things that maybe were missed in that movement,
For sure.
or maybe miscommunicated,
Yeah.
that really have messed some people up.
Yeah, I think that, and again, when I speak of purity culture, I can't say that just like you think of true love waits, I think of I Kiss Dating Goodbye, right? There's a book written by an evangelical pastor named Joshua Harris. He's no longer a man of faith. I mean, honestly, the damage that the book did on others caused him to question why he wrote it, and even the faith that caused him to write it. And so he went from being a pastor and kind of in the reform movement to moving away from pastoring altogether and to moving away from faith. He and his wife ended up divorcing, which is a very sad story. And you can find it. I mean, he's very public with his story now, trying to question, like, well, how did I get here and why did I get there? And so I think that, but that book specifically, I Kiss Dating Goodbye, kind of laid the framework. And he was a very young man when he wrote it, and kind of laid the framework for the purity culture. It's something that was already in churches. I mean, just the idea coming out of kind of the free sex movement in the 60s and 70s. In the 80s and 90s, church tried to lock it down. And it was like, man, we've got to get away from this. We've got to run from it.
These kids running wild.
These kids are going wild. So the church tried to lock it down. And this book was kind of birthed from that movement, and then birthed a movement in itself that we call purity culture. And so I think that there was a pain that purity culture caused because so many people got married and there was shame attached to sex, and there is shame attached to sexual intimacy. And even I think that we thought that it was going to go away whenever we got married.
Right.
And I think that in that promise of, or in that the pain that purity culture caused, there was also a promise that, well, if you can wait now, God's going to bless your sex life and it's going to be the most amazing thing ever. You're going to get married and the veil will open and you will have sex with your partner, with your husband, your wife, and it's going to be incredible.
That's half
And
true. Half true. The Lord does bless it in marriage.
100% the
The
Lord
other
blesses
half,
it.
not true.
Right. Like to think that you're going to just like come into marriage and be incredible at sex and your sex life is going to be amazing. Is God going to bless your diligence? Yes, he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Is God going to bless your sexual intimacy? Yes, he is. But to think that that's all you need is to stay pure. And then once you get married, you're going to have this incredible, fulfilling, intimate sex life that just comes easy and it is easy to initiate and is easy to make happen. And like, it feels natural, all those things. That's just simply not true.
Maybe for some,
Sure.
for most, not
For most,
not the
definitely not.
case. Not for us.
I know for sure not for us. And I know that 99% of the men that I talk to that are born again, spirit filled, lead their families well, love their wives, are committed to their wives, are committed to their family, will say purity culture affected their marriage and affected their sex life heavily. And I think 99% of the girls that you talk to that were raised in church say, I for sure carry shame and guilt when it comes to sex. And it still feels dirty at times. And the subject still feels dirty to talk about. It feels like an area we're not allowed to touch. We talked about in a podcast where sex feels like, in the church, it feels like something that the world created that God allows us to do. It's like, man, that's just not the case.
Right.
This is something God created. This is ours.
Yeah.
Like it's ours. And the purity culture caused a pain to people because as they got married, they walked in shame in their sex life or they wouldn't talk about it. There was a lack of communication, which we're going to kind of dive into that. And then there was this unfulfilled expectation or unmet expectation of, but it's okay because when you get married, you're going to be able to have sex and as much of it as you want. It's going to be amazing. And I think all the dudes were clinging to this promise, like, but when I get married, I can like unleash the beast that lives inside of me. This 14, 16, 18-year-old kid with raging hormones is like, oh man, I'm going to get married and we're going to have as much sex as we want. It's going to be incredible. And then you get married and it's like, why is this awkward?
Yeah.
Why is this hard to do? Why do I not know how to initiate it? Why does she not know? Why doesn't no one to talk to about this? Why can't we talk about it? Like there's all these questions of like, oh man, this isn't nearly as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And so that is what we're going to talk a little more about right now. I'm going to get into some of the pain that purity culture caused.
Yeah. I mean, I think you already hit the first one on the head. It's a big one. And that is the feelings of shame, guilt, and even confusion around these desires. It's like we're just trying so hard to not dip into that. And it's like you can only resist it for so long. And then to like in an instant be expected to totally embrace it. It feels like it's going against everything that you've worked for. It doesn't feel like you've arrived at the finish line and it's like, yes, I've got the prize. Actually, it feels like you arrived at the finish line, but somehow you got the last place participation medal. And so it's like this shame all of a sudden can come on you, this guilt, and it's like, hang on, like I'm trying to reason this in my head. I know that this is okay. I know that I'm supposed to experience this in marriage, but I also know I'm supposed to love it, but I'm not loving it. What's wrong with me? Why do I not like it? Why, whatever it is. And then there's just this spiral that the enemy loves to capitalize on. And jump in there and say, yeah, actually, you should feel shameful. Yeah, actually, you don't have a sex drive or whatever lie it is that he's trying to feed us.
Yeah. I think that purity culture didn't offer us a healthy framework to understand sexual intimacy, to understand the complexities of intimacy within a marriage, to understand that it takes communication, that we need to be able to talk to one another, that we need to be able to have conversations about this to define the boundaries of which we're going to explore this thing, right? It's like, what are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? What do you desire? What do I desire? How do I explain my desires? How do we figure out if this is pleasurable for either of us or how to make it pleasurable for both of us? Like, how do we explore this thing if it's something we can't talk about?
Yeah.
Or if it's something that we've always like blushed about, or that's always been shunned or put in the closet. It's like, no, 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 we can't mention that until you're married. Like we can talk about sex because all the boys are gonna be freaking out. Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like all the boys are gonna be giggling, all the girls are gonna be embarrassed and feel shameful. And it's like youth ministries refused to talk about it. And it's like, man, this is something that we need to be having conversations about with our kids,
Yeah.
with our spouse, with and again, we are very careful to not share our sex life with friends or
Right.
mentors or anyone.
Sure, we'll talk about the idea of sex. And we
Yes.
have, couples who we have coached through premarital counseling in our young marrieds group, who have come to us and, hit their heads on things and asked for help. And we will always point them back to the word.
Yep.
We will always encourage them to continue to pursue and to work through it and all of that. But in that, we're never going to share personal details
No.
and experiences, but there is a healthy way to communicate about that. And that is another piece of the pain of the purity culture, is just that lack of communication altogether surrounding sex. Like, I'm trying to think back to being raised in church. I mean, I was at church every Sunday, every Wednesday, every time the doors were open. And I honestly cannot think of a time that I heard sex talked about in a positive light.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time I ever heard it talked about was through this program, this True Love Waits program. And it was just communicated as something that was like untouchable. Don't go there. Don't go there. There's this big wall up between you and that thing, and I don't ever remember there being healthy conversation about it. Do you remember hearing about it?
We grew up in two different churches. I think that in like my like charismatic evangelical, upbringing, it's not denominational really, is the church that I grew up in, but it definitely wasn't like Southern Baptist, probably wasn't as, so I do think that we probably had more conversations than you did, right? Like I think that it was probably brought up more. I think that my youth pastors probably did their absolute best to talk about it in a healthy way, but it was still one of those things that, when they would do like the boy talks and the girl talks, it was still very much like, I think that they spoke positivity into the girls, like, hey, communicate, like this communicates value. Like the way you present yourself communicates value, and you are valuable as a daughter of God. And I think that is such a crucial message that girls need to hear. But then I also think they were taught, so like, forget them boys. Like, don't talk to them. Don't look at them. They just want your body. They're looking at you. Like, all they want is to have sex with you. And if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant and die. Like, it's like there was this like whole stigma about like, you are valuable. You are worth something. Prove that with the way that you dress. Dress pure. Don't allow, men to look at you in a certain type of way. And it almost made us enemies.
Right.
It's like it made male and for boys, it was like, check your eyes, check your heart. Don't look at girls. Like, like don't look at her butt when she walks away. Like, I mean, all of this, like, don't listen to that music that makes you think this way. Watch what, be careful of what movies you watch and which I agree with. But when the mindset is that's your enemy, avoid it. And it's not. This is God's will for you, and He's created this for you, and you get to there's going to come a day where you get to actually enjoy this, and it's good for you, and like it's gonna bless you. Like, I don't know that was communicated to us as teens and adolescents.
Yeah.
It was always like, boys, don't look at the girls, girls, run from the boys.
Well, I even think, how many people maybe haven't grown up in a home where they felt like that was open conversation. Like I grew up in an amazing home with great parents. And we talked about all kinds of stuff, but not sex.
Yeah.
Like that was just not a conversation that we had. I actually remember when we were
Oh, no.
dating. Do you remember, what I'm going to talk about?
Can we tell the story? We can do it. We can tell it.
We can tell this story.
sure.
This is our podcast. We can talk about it.
Sorry, Mark.
If your kids are listening, maybe don't have them listen. So we were dating, and I've mentioned before that I was married before and widowed. I've only experienced sex inside of marriage, but having been widowed before, I had sex. Dustin and I are dating, and we're hanging out with both of our families because our families were friends. And actually, I think we were getting ready to start officially dating, or were we getting ready to get married?
No, we were talking about marriage. I mean, we were either engaged or getting there, because I remember, I guess we were,
You take the story, it's actually much funnier coming from you.
oh, it's terrifying. Okay, you gotta understand, first of all. So I said, sorry, Mark. That is my father-in-law. His name is Mike. There's an inside joke. I call him Mark. It's funny, I hope.
He accidentally called my dad the wrong name one time.
One time,
And he's
it's
never
just
lived it
stuck
down.
forever. So you understand, my father-in-law is a very big guy. Okay, he's like 6'4", looks like Hulk Hogan. He's got a handlebar mustache, long white hair. Doesn't exactly, he's not like, doesn't talk like Hulk Hogan. Just, whatever. But I just hear wrestling voices in my head now. But
He's the best.
he's the best. My father-in-law is the best. However, I did not know this best version of Mike Height before we got married. And so we are dating. I am terrified of this man. He is big. He is scary. All I've heard is stories of him beating up guys in bars before he was saved. Now he's a man of God, spirit-filled, loves the Lord. Incredible.
Yeah.
But I wasn't hearing those stories. I was just hearing the bar fights. And so there's like this, like, I don't know. I was terrified of him.
Yeah.
But
Rightly so.
I'm also very comfortable with my family. And so I'm with my family. I'm with, my beautiful girlfriend who I plan on marrying. And our families kind of knew that, just the nature of our relationship. They knew that we were planning on getting married and we were looking at rings and whatever. And I remember my dad made a joke and he was like, well, ring, marriage, kids, like that's how it goes. We're waiting for some grandbabies. And I was like, again, just made this off color, inappropriate, shouldn't have made it joke where I was like, oh, hey, we got to practice for kids before we have kids. Like, give us some time. Ha ha ha. Everyone in the room awkwardly laughs except my father-in-law. He just locks eyes with me from across the room. And I'm like, oh no. I'm like, huh. It like goes from like, right? To like, oh dear God, what did I do? And then Heather smacks me and goes, babe, I don't talk about sex with my parents. I've been married before. And they still think I'm a virgin, like as far as they know. Ha ha ha. Mark never cracks a smile. Okay. My father-in-law looks at me and goes, no, I know she's a virgin. You know how? And I was like, how, sir? And he goes, because one time Nathan made a joke like that and I cut his pecker off. Now I knew that wasn't true.
And then we all were laughing and you were the only one.
Now everybody's laughing. Mike cracks a smile. I'm not laughing anymore. I'm now sweating. I knew it wasn't true, but I also thought, this guy's dead serious.
He could do it.
He didn't cut my pecker off. No doubt. I apologize if that story hurts your ears, but that story changed my life. I never made a joke ever again.
And you'll probably use a version of that story on our daughter's
100%.
boyfriend at some point.
100%. Yeah, the threat is real,
the threat
fellas.
is real. All that to say, some families just don't talk about sex.
Some families just don't talk about it. Heather's family, one of those families. My family, we're a little more open about it.
Yeah.
You know?
So the lack of communication surrounding sex can pull into your marriage then. It's like, if you don't feel like it's a safe space at your church to talk about sex, if you don't feel like it's a safe space to talk at home about sex, then you jump into marriage, you're probably also not going to be having conversations around the dinner table with your new spouse about your sex life. So that is definitely a pain of the purity culture.
Yes, and if we've communicated anything in every podcast, it's that communication is such a big deal, especially when it comes to sex. Like, this is something you have to talk about. We've said it over and over and over again, but it's just true. Mm-hmm. It's true. This is something that you need to be comfortable with. Create a healthy space to talk about it in a real way, not just a joking way. We used to joke about, like, I would make jokes, like whatever, like say something silly about sex. And she's like, hey, that's like no way to bring it up, right? Like, that is not how I communicate about. Now we can be lighthearted. Yeah, we can be lighthearted and we can make jokes. I mean, like it's our sex life. We can whatever. But, between the two of us, we can have inside jokes. But also, like, we need to have real conversations too. Yeah. Like, we need to have a place where we can sit down and say, hey, maybe like I'm not feeling pleased in this way, or hey, I don't love that thing, or hey, I would really like to try this or do this more or whatever. Like, be open to having conversations and know that, like, this is yours and it's yours to develop and to like make it great. You have the rest of your life to make it great. And so make it great. Spend the time and invest the time to communicate about this, about your sex life.
Yeah. Next one you kind of hit on a little bit earlier, but the purity culture highlights only the risks and the consequences of sexual sin. And I would say
Yeah.
even this flowed into, I went to public school and we took sex classes, sex, I don't know, sex ed, I guess is what it was called. And we were just shown slideshows of STDs and what they look like. And so it's almost like that fear tactic kind of thing, like
Hmm.
okay, maybe we can scare them out of having sex. Maybe we can scare them out of the possibility of getting an STD or getting pregnant or something like that.
Having a soul tie. It's like
But
you're gonna have a soul tie with that person forever, and you're never gonna be able to forget about them. And you're like, it's gonna rip your heart out,
yeah.
and you're giving a piece of your heart to every single person. Now, those are not ideas that I necessarily disagree with.
Mm.
However, when it's a scare tactic, and when it's not like, hey, when you don't communicate the value,
Mm.
right? Like we have to be able to communicate value of, hey, you are worth more, therefore you save yourself for what
Sure.
God has called you to. You know what I mean? And I think that we can do that in a loving and informative way to teach young people that, hey, sex is a good thing.
Mm.
It is a gift. Like you don't have to, we don't have to use the scare tactic of emotional trauma or the loss of your self-worth or STDs or, pregnancy or whatever. It's like, man, if you've ever experienced that, whether in marriage or outside of marriage, my gosh, like I think that it added to the shame. It
Oh,
was like, well,
yeah.
wait, now if I do go and make a mistake and I do get an STD or I do have an unwanted pregnancy, it's like you're so afraid to tell the people in the church because the main message is don't do this or you'll get this and this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like pregnancy is death and STD is
Well,
death.
and again, it's like pregnancy is another gift from the Lord.
100%.
And so
Yeah.
then it's like we get married, we're struggling with this idea of, physically giving ourselves to each other and feeling okay with that and, all everything that comes with it. And then you get pregnant and it's like, well, shoot, everything I've heard about pregnancy has been how hard it is, because
Mhm.
with that scare tactic, it's like, you don't want to have a kid, like it's so hard. You never sleep. You're up all night. Those things are true. But it's almost like, oh, shoot, what do we do? Like, now we're going to have a kid. Are we
Mhm.
ready? Do we know what we're doing? Is it going to be okay? Am I ever going to sleep again? And instead of talking about like, being a mom is amazing. Having a baby
Mhm.
is amazing. You want to step into that when you're stable, more stable,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that there also we end up with these couples that get pregnant for the first time and are just crippled with fear
Or
of
we
stepping
end
into
up with
parenthood.
young people who did experience sex outside of the will of God and then get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And then they either go get an abortion because they're so
Right.
afraid
Right.
and they don't believe they have any help because
Mm.
the church is just shaming them
Mm.
for it. And instead of going to the one place where they should get help,
Yeah.
right? They go and either get an abortion or run away and hide in their shame or you know what I mean? Like there's so much that comes with and it's like, my gosh, if you have gotten an abortion, like we love you
Yes.
and we are sorry that you had to go through that. And we are like, we want to be here for you. If you are 18, were 18, had a teen pregnancy, like the church should be your number one supporter. What I
Mhm.
love about our church is that our pastor has such a heart for single moms
Oh, yeah.
and is constantly saying, if you are a single mom, please let us help you. We will give you
Mhm.
groceries. We will provide support for
Yes.
you. Like, I mean, we rally
Yeah.
around single parents, not just single moms, but single
Mhm.
parents. And we rally around young people who have, simply stepped outside of the will of God, gotten pregnant. And it's like, we don't want to add to the shame of what you're going through. We
Yes.
want to be here to help you.
And to
All have sinned and
celebrate,
fallen short of the glory of God. Yeah,
to
okay.
celebrate that
To celebrate
joy,
that
the
that life,
joy
that
of
child, that joy,
parenthood.
100%, 100%. And I think as much as purity culture hurt those who got married and carried the shame with them, I think it also hurt those who did experience sex outside of marriage
Yeah.
and had a consequence,
Yeah.
got an STD, got pregnant, like did deal with emotional trauma, did deal with a lack of self-worth because of how they were treated.
Mhm.
And the church, instead of rallying around them and helping them, said, see, I told you so.
Mm.
Didn't we tell you this was going to happen? Didn't we tell you what sex resulted in? It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We, the church believers, we need to rally around, show the love of God, and help those people
Yes.
and us people. I mean, like I didn't experience that, you know what I mean? But it's like, my gosh, like we can't make, like, I don't want to make anyone who has ever stepped outside of the will of God for sex or for whatever feel shame in that,
Right.
because we need to rally around them and show that, like, man, we're not adding any shame to what you did. We want to be here for you, and the Lord still wants you to have a great life, wants your child to have a great life, wants you to be healed and set free, and you know what I mean, like put in the work to be able to still have a great marriage one day, and still raise great kids, even if you're a single parent, or if you get married to someone who wasn't the mother or father of your child. Like, we God still has great things for you, and He can still
Absolutely.
redeem you.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll wrap up this conversation with one more thing that I've noticed, that the purity culture fails to provide adequate sex education, which leaves people unprepared for healthy intimacy once married. So people get married and then they're like, now what?
Yeah.
How, obviously they probably could figure out the basics,
Right.
but now what?
Well, like we said before, I think that purity culture guarantees like guilt-free, amazing sex when you get married.
Yeah.
And then you get married and you have sex, and it's like, why do I feel bad afterwards?
Yeah.
Why do I feel guilty? Why
And
do
who
I
do
feel
you talk to
shameful?
about that?
Why does that feel dirty? Like, why does that feel weird?
Yes.
Like, what can we do? What can't we do?
Yes.
Do we ever have a conversation in youth group about what was and wasn't acceptable in the bedroom? Like, maybe you wait for premarital counseling. Maybe you get a premarital counselor who will walk through those things with you. Maybe not. And I think that I've said this before, but sex was always something we were running from. When in youth group and being raised, where celibacy was the answer, which it is, but celibacy, like anything outside of celibacy, was an enemy, and an enemy to your soul. And how dare you? And don't go there, and don't look at that, and don't talk about it. Sex was always something we're running from. Sex is something we're running to. It's something that we get to in marriage. And I think that we need to teach it in that way. An author once said, the young man who rings the bell at the brothel is unconsciously looking for God.
Wow.
The young man who rings the bell at the brothel, the young man who gives his body to so many women, the young woman who gives her body away to so many men, are unconsciously looking for God. What you're searching for, God created you to find. You're just looking in all the wrong places.
Wow.
What you're searching for is an intimacy with someone that God created you to have, but you're looking in the wrong places. If you've done that, we're not shaming you for it. What we're telling you is God has something better for you.
Yes.
God has something better that is sexual intimacy within a marriage, that He has given us, and it's a gift. Human sexuality comes to us from God, and even when it is sadly perverted, the one who perverts it is unknowingly referring to something that is incredibly sacred and godly. That's exactly why the perversion of sex is so wrong, because it's anti-God. We serve a sex-positive God, and He has given it to us as a gift. And when we search for His love and the intimacy with Him and intimacy with another, the world has a broken way of finding that thing.
Yes.
And you're never going to find it if you search the world's way. But you're also not going to find it by running away from it and pretending that it doesn't exist and trying to be perfect so that when you get into marriage, God's going to bless it. Man, you need to prepare now. If you're preparing for marriage, prepare now for what God has called you to, and know that it's a gift, and then communicate about it. Ask questions to people that you trust. Talk to people in the church. Talk to your if you get engaged and you know that marriage is in your future, begin that talk of, hey, we probably need to prepare for that wedding night moment, to know that it may be a little awkward, and that's okay. And I'm here with you, and I'm willing to get through the awkwardness, and we're going to have a great sex life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
So here's the bottom line. The purity culture is not all bad. I
Sure.
think that the foundation, the idea of it was great. Like, should we save sex for marriage? Yes, absolutely. Should we put boundaries in place? Yes, absolutely. All of those things are great ideas. But now I think we have a responsibility to make sure that our generation, the generations below us, are better educated on this idea of, yes, these things are for in marriage only. They should be saved for marriage. But once you get there, it's really great. It's really worth the wait. And instead of allowing shame to creep in or a lack of conversation, creating a space that allows for all of those things so that we can set them up for success. So when they walk down that aisle and walk back down the aisle again and step into a brand new part of their marriage, they're not carrying baggage with them from something that should have been setting them up for success.
Yeah, that's really good, babe. So how do we make our marriage greater today? Man, understand God's design for sex. That it was designed for intimacy. It was designed to glorify him. It was designed to bring you and your spouse closer together, to form you into one, right? The two should become one. This is part of that process. So understand his design for sex and lay aside any thought that doesn't align with the will of God toward your sexual relationship.
Yep.
If you are not married, man, get plugged into a church, find someone that you can trust and have these conversations with and explain what you're feeling and ask why you're feeling and align your mind with God's mind and his vision for sex. If you have stepped out of the will of God as it pertains to sex, man, God has forgiven you.
Yes.
He wants you to walk in freedom. He wants you to begin to live pure right now. You could do that. You can still have a healthy relationship with sex and with God's idea for sex. And so learn those things and ask God to help you. Man, God wants to help you. God wants you to live the greatest life imaginable. He wants your marriage to be blessed. He wants you to have a great sex life within the boundaries that he's created. And so, man, do that.
Yeah.
And I think that is how we get greater today.
Yep. Well, that's all we've got for today's episode, but stick around with us as we continue in this series. We've got a lot more content coming your way. If at any time you ever have questions about anything that we talk about, feel free to drop comments on our videos. You can email us at connect@greatermarriage.com. We would love nothing more than to be there for you and to rally with you as you put in the work to build a greater marriage. So you can find resources over at our website, greatermarriage.com. There's some free downloads on there. We're just really grateful for you. We're praying for you always, expecting great things for your marriage. So go be great.